At one time, not that long ago, scientists thought there was a barrier that couldn't be broken. Then a new word entered the dictionary: supersonic.
A jet plane is about to break the sound barrier. Flying at Mach 1, 760 miles an hour, is routine for today's fighter pilots.
Speed is great. Speed is groovy.
Concorde ranks really alongside the first flight of the Wright brothers and the moonshots of America. It was a huge, huge step forward. At a time when aeroplanes were only just beginning to explore the sound barrier, to think of taking 100 passengers at twice the speed of sound, you try and think of some other machine that was built in 1969 that's still 20 years ahead of the nearest opposition now. The aircraft responds very, very quickly. It responds almost like a fighter airplane. One of the joys of flying on Concorde is that when you go through the sound barrier, you feel absolutely nothing. Such a beautifully designed airplane aerodynamically that you hear nothing, you see nothing, and you feel nothing. The only indication is the slight flicker on one of the instruments. And the Mach meter registering 1.00.
You can put your glass of champagne down on the table in front of you, and the surface of the champagne will remain unmoved, not a ripple on it. I think the amazing thing about flying at Mach 2 is that there's no sensation of speed at all. You're flying up at around 60,000 feet, about 11 miles or so above the Earth's surface, and you're above all the Earth's weather. You almost feel that you're just hanging suspended in space, and you're waiting for Mother Earth to spin around and for your destination to arrive below you. At 55,000 feet on a clear day, you can most certainly see the curvature of the Earth. The other thing that you see is a very dark blue to the sky, because you're really on the edges of the Earth's atmosphere.
And there's a shadow of the Earth cast on the Earth's own atmosphere. And right on the edge of this dark meniscus, you can actually see the colours of the spectrum.
But flying faster than the speed of sound wasn't always as simple and safe as this. Breaking the sound barrier cost many flyers their lives before it was first achieved over 50 years ago. British Royal Air Force pilots during the Second World War found that their fast Spitfire fighters became alarmingly unstable when in a dive. They were flying well short of the speed of sound, 760 miles an hour, but the control surfaces on their fighters ceased to function. Pilots couldn't pull the plane out of its dive, usually with fatal results. Flyers believed they were up against an invisible barrier. With the arrival of Frank Whittle's jet engine in 1941, Britain gained a world lead in speed. But in the new high-speed jet age, the problems of instability approaching the sound barrier became only worse. Captain Eric Brown was a test pilot flying the new jets.
As you get up to these higher Mach numbers, you usually start with getting vibration, which can be quite heavy. This will increase to severe buffeting, and you get quite thrown around in the cockpit. Now, as the nose-down dive gets worse and you try to pull out, you may go too far and not be able to pull out. The Americans have a delightful expression for it, graveyard dive.
Wind tunnel tests showed that as the speed of sound approached, violent shock waves built up on wing surfaces. These, the wind tunnel showed, would disappear altogether once the plane had gone through the sound barrier. But no pilot had yet been brave enough to power a plane faster than the speed of sound. In order to keep their lead in high-speed flight, the British decided secretly in 1945 to build the M52. It was an experimental plane whose sole aim was to break through the mysterious sound barrier.
The design was based on a .5-inch bullet because it was known that when that was fired, it went supersonic.
To dissipate the shock waves at that speed, the M52 was designed with tiny, thin wings and a movable tail. Eric Brown was to pilot the M52 through the sound barrier.
We hoped to get it up to 50,000 feet, and in a dive, we believed we could attain a Mach number of 1.07. The pilot was seated in a capsule in the nose. In emergency, he could jettison the entire capsule by activating 4 explosive bolts.
The Asbo generation, guilty as charged.
Everything I do in my life, I just